This is the start of making the sleeve. As you can see, the fabric has a pattern to it, and I've decided I want the pattern of the flowers as it shows up going from top to bottom, which I've matched up with my bodice. So what will happen is I've got the sleeve pattern piece pinned right now, and then I will turn it over the other way, which I'll show you in a minute when I cut this out, so that we've got two opposites, because the sleeve is one of those that hangs higher at the front and lower at the back. Measuring the length of the sleeve from left to right down the centre, it comes to about 1 metre 30 centimetres. So that's approximately 51 inches. So that's the length. Measuring down the side here, and obviously my arms are very small, so these measurements are for my own body and my arms. So we've got 25 centimetres, nearly 10 inches. And the top I've had to add 2 inches. So just think that this pattern piece actually extends to here where I've got these pins, which is 2 inches more than what I need. So measuring from the extra, about 48 centimetres. I've included a bit more because I'm going to overlock it, so we'll chop about 2 or 3 millimetres off the edge. So you're looking about 19 inches. So that's the middle. Okay, so on the bottom here I've cut my first sleeve, and that's the top edge and that's the bottom. And over here we have the left side, which I've marked. And then we've flipped the whole pattern piece over from left to right. So where I had this long edge here for the bottom, it's now on the opposite side. So if I just stand back, you can now see it's the complete opposite of the bottom piece. So here I have my sleeve pattern, and this is the top edge, and I've turned it in roughly, sorry, I'm trying to hold this at the same time, roughly 2 inches from the top, and I've done that all the way around the top edge there. Now I will be turning in these edges about 1.5 centimetres in, so I've just done that for now, and I need to measure 7 inches from the very end to there, and I'll just mark that with a pin like so, and I'll do the same for the other end here as well. Be turning that end in, and then you mark your 7 inches. So do exactly the same end to end. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to be cartridge pleating the back edge of this sleeve, which will go from the back shoulder seam to just before under the arm. I've decided on 3 rows of cartridge pleats, and they are roughly 1 centimetre apart. That's on every row, and about 1 inch apart. And I've started about 1/4 way from the top edge. I'm going to leave the top for now that I've done my gathering threads and move on to the bottom here, bottom of the sleeve, and I'm starting approximately 6 centimeters in from the edge, and you'll see here I've marked these little dots just to help me with doing some pleats along the bottom. So I've marked them every centimetre all the way along. And then when we get to the other side, I've also left 6 centimetre gap from the edge.
We are now doing the left front sleeve. This is going to be the top of the sleeve, and we have neatened the edge. So what you're going to do now is find out where you're going to start your pleating. If we go over to the bodice, get your tape measure, you're going to be measuring from the front over to the second seam at the back, which is about 16 centimeters or approximately 6 inches. We'll put that measurement here, and that is where you're going to start pleating for your cartridge pleats for the top of the sleeve. The measurement for the bottom of the sleeve that won't be pleated, you go same starting point, and you measure underneath the sleeve to this seam, last seam, and it's approximately 21 centimeters or approximately 7 inches. You don't have to be too accurate. So you come to the other side of your sleeve now that you've already neatened, and you put that measurement against your sleeve, and that is where you will stop pleating. This part here does not get pleated.
Okay, so as explained earlier, I'm starting 6 centimeters in, and I'm going to start pleating. So I'm going to take that dot on 6 centimeters, and I'm going to pleat every third dot. So then I count 1, 2, 3. You don't have to do it this way, but I found this very helpful. So you make sure that all your edges line up as well, and you haven't got one on the other or one like that. So I'm going to count my dots again. 1, 2, 3. So as you go, you've got to make sure the edge is kept straight. So then I take the next dot and I go 1, 2, 3. Then you want to make sure it stays straight. And then I'm just going to keep going like that all the way along the bottom till I reach 6 centimeters in from the other edge. Next I'm going to be adding this delicate little trim to the bottom edge of the sleeve. So I'm just going to prick stitch and catch that in places so it goes all the way around the bottom. Sorry, I'm trying to do this at the same time. So I got this off eBay, but unfortunately they don't have any more left, so but I'll put the link on the website anyway. Okay, I've now gone ahead and I've sewn on that lace trim, the same that I have on the top edge of my bodice. So I'm just mimicking the same pattern scheme here. So I've done that, and next I've decided up the sides here there needs to be something else, and I didn't want to use that because it's just going to look too much, and it's supposed to be a slit in the sleeve. So I've got this braid trim here, and I'm going to use that on the edge. So I'm just going to go ahead and sew that down by hand onto the edge of both my sleeves. 3, 2.
Because our sleeve to go in is really big, I don't want to have too much volume of fabric, so temporarily I'm just going to gather up the cartridge pleats, but I'm not fitting it at this point. I'm just making less fabric for myself. Just putting that in. I'm not being really fussy at this stage because it can be done properly when it's ready to be put in. Okay, now that I've just done that, I'm just going to ties so they don't start coming undone. So just put a pin into your fabric and then grab hold of all your ties and just do a figure of 8 around your pin just a few times, and then stop it from unravelling, and then you just put the pin back into the fabric and there you go, that will hold that. You'll also find it essential to mark which sleeve you're putting, because they can be so easily confused as to which one goes where. But our pattern goes up into a curve like this, so I know that's the front of the sleeve. So we're not going to put it in like a conventional sleeve. Where you have your seam there, we're just going to tuck it underneath about a centimetre and a half. You don't have to be too accurate with that, and pin that in place, and then continue going backwards so you're overlapping your fabric. Just found a pin and just pin that in place. And we're going to keep going until we meet the seam at the back of the bodice. So another pin, and it should be where I want it to be. That correctly, your pleating will start at the back seam. Now that I've got that far, I'm now going to go all the way around to the front of the sleeve. Then I'm going to start in the same place and go down the front of the bodice this time. So tuck it underneath as close as you can and pin that in. You don't have a gap. Then I'm going to continue down the front of the bodice, just overlapping the sleeve slightly. And we're going to continue to do this until we get to this seam at the back of the bodice. We're going to use what is called a back stitch to sew the sleeve in. Tracy has just done 1 or 2 stitches there to hold the thread in place, and now she's at the back of the sleeve. So you want to come up through the fabric and because there's several layers to this, you might find it a bit difficult. And now you go backwards with your needle about 4 or 5 millimeters, so not very far, and pull that through. Now when you come back up, you're going to go in front of that stitch. Be a little bit difficult to see, but you're actually coming up in front of that stitch. And now you're going to go backwards to the first stitch. And then you come forwards of that stitch. And then you go backwards down the original stitch. This is a very strong stitch to use. So Tracy's going to continue on like this, sewing all the way to that back seam where our pleating is going to start. Okay, now you back stitch all the way underneath the arm until you reach the back seam, and whether you're going to be pleating your extra bit here, cartridge pleats or just ordinary pleats or just gathered, we're going to do that next. Okay, going to the inside of our sleeve now, we're going to sew the cartridge pleats on the inside of the seam. So we've turned the whole thing to the back and we've pulled in our cartridge pleats to fit that space, and I've just put a pin in now and again. Hold it down, and we're just going to tack that on now using every single pleat that you see. That's going to be tacked down until we get to the end.
Okay, so what I'm doing is I've just started here sewing these pleats on, and it's the same as the skirt. If you've seen the tutorial for the skirt, I'm just going to take a piece of the liner, and this is very difficult to try and show this, but I'll just split the pleat there. You're going in from the back of the pleat, not the one on top. Don't go through these ones on top, you want to go through the ones underneath. So just pull that through, and you're doing every single one. And I'm using the thicker top stitching thread, and every 3 or 4 I'm just doing it again, an extra one. Although the thread's quite strong, the sleeve is quite weighty, so just every 3 or 4 just go over it again. As you can see, it's really fiddly. So you're just going up through the middle. That's how I've chosen to do this particular one, and I'll just finish that till we get to the end.
Okay, now that Tracy's finished sewing all these down, we're going to sort out the loose ends that you used to pull your gathers in. This is the thread at the end, and you're just going to make sure that your gathers are still tight by pulling that thread. That's it, and then just tie that off with a few whip stitches. Don't want it coming undone. Just finishing up here with the last thread. Make sure it's You sew it a few times to hold it tight, and then that's that done. So if we turn it over to the front, you'll be able to see all that hard work, and this is what it will look like when it's finished. Lots of nice cartridge pleats. Right, we're now going to close up the slit of the sleeve at the bottom, and what you're doing is just butting the bottom pieces together and just do a whip stitch between the two on the top for about a centimetre and a half. Just go from one to the other. Don't make it so tight as it's overlapping. Looks like it's quite thick to go through there. Wait for a thimble. There we go. Right, do that for about a centimetre and a half. Just join them together. Okay, we've done about a centimetre and a half, and now we're going to go through to the back. So we'll turn the whole thing on its back so you can see the inside. And now you're going to do the same. Just whip stitch across right way down to the bottom. And then tie it off really securely. Okay, now that we've whipped the top and the bottom of that, we're going to the top of the sleeve. If I can just find it, it's in here somewhere. And you're going to do exactly the same. For the first centimetre, just whip stitch those two together like that, and then go to the back, to the inside of the sleeve, and just whip stitch the back. You only need to do about a centimetre, but that's just to secure it so that if the sleeve pulls at all, it's not going to pull out of your bodice.
The last thing I've done is there was a gap here with the lace, so I've just cut out a separate piece from what I had left over here, and I've sewn that down so it just looks like it's continuous. So we've now got the sleeves in and secure, and down the sides here where the trim was, I've decided to sew on some little pearls. Yes, ivory colour. So at the moment it just looks a bit flat, and I just thought that makes it look a bit more special. Okay, so this now completes the bodice so far, and I'll just do a quick twirl for the end of this tutorial video for you to look at, and then there'll be the preview coming up sometime. I don't know when, but it will. And there we go. Thank you very much for watching, and please check out all my other videos.